Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland brothers. Come on, be in it and join in the fun. Travel all over Australia.
The small township of Bairnsdale, here in Victoria, has a very interesting church. St Mary's Catholic Church there has all the ceilings painted like the Sistine Chapel in Italy, and they're very beautiful paintings.
And then we visit an unusual property in Western New South Wales. It's called Nagandi, and it's out here near Gulgong. There we visit the ancient Aboriginal sites where we see evidences of early Aboriginal occupation.
Then we go to Mount Tamborine, here in southern Queensland, to have a look at a butterfly farm. It's the only butterfly farm in Australia. We're also going to have a look at the life cycle of the butterfly. We have a letter from Teresa Cumming of the Gap in Queensland. Teresa wrote and said, "My mother has a colour slide of a Roman Catholic church in Victoria, which she took during a trip to Melbourne some years ago. The church has a painted ceiling like the Sistine Chapel in Italy. Could you please tell me the name of this church and then tell us its story?" Well, Teresa, we found your church and it's in Bairnsdale, Victoria. We're going inside to have a look at the paintings and find out the story behind them. Bairnsdale is 270 kilometres east of Melbourne at the mouth of the Mitchell River. In less than 40 years, St Mary's Roman Catholic Church in Bairnsdale's main street has become famous throughout Australia because of its unique murals and painted ceilings. The main part of the ceiling is filled with myriads of designs, all interspersed with angelic faces and forms. There are between 300 and 400 angels in these varied scenes, and no two faces are identical. High up in front of the sanctuary are vivid paintings representing the miseries of hell, the desolation and loneliness of purgatory, and the happiness of paradise in heaven. All of these incredible paintings were done by Italian artist Frank Floriani. In 1931, during the Depression, Floriani came to Bairnsdale and did whatever work he could get, mainly picking peas for 6 shillings a day. He approached the parish priest of Bairnsdale, the late Father Kremen, for work, and was asked to repaint some statues in the church. Father Kremen was pleased, and Floriani worked steadily for nearly 5 years, inspired by memories of European churches, but also using his own ideas. The greater part of the murals were completed by 1934, but Floriani returned to complete the works in 1937 and 38. Frank Floriani was born near Venice and studied painting at the Academy of Arts in Turin. He came to Australia in 1928 and now lives in Melbourne. In his 80s, Floriani's main love is still in painting. He spends hours each day with brush and canvas. He paints a variety of subjects, including the occasional religious painting. Floriani was eager to talk to us about his most famous works in St Mary's Church at Bairnsdale.
Started with the scaffold up, you know, the big circle, the big front in there. And was six or 7 months after, the people used to wondering what I'm doing because they didn't never see anything. Of course. After, when I took the scaffold out, well, shifted, you know, back, and they could see it on the time they start to see something. It doesn't make any difference to me if I had for instance, 3 years or a 6, well, the job is done, you know, I mean, because the point is, you see, you got to love to do it and do it. That's all about.
Frank Floriani's paintings become more famous every year as hundreds of tourists come to see them. Some return again and again to find something new to interest them.
Are you looking for a good place to camp with plenty of food? Then come here to Nagandi in New South Wales. That's what the word Nagandi means in the local Aboriginal dialect, a good place to camp with plenty of food. It's about 15 kilometres from Gulgong, and we've come here at the request of Glenn Morford from Blacktown in New South Wales. He said, I visited Nagandi and thought it was an interesting place. When I was there, I went and looked at some ancient Aboriginal sites. I had a personally conducted tour with Leo Selwyn. Well, Leo Selwyn runs Nagandi, so we're going to meet Leo now and find out a little bit more about the ancient Aboriginal sites here. Leo Selwyn and his wife run a 3,000-acre mixed farm at Nagandi, but recently he's turned his time to showing visitors the ancient Aboriginal places which abound in the surrounding hills. Even the farm with its menagerie of animals has a quaint appeal to most visitors. Everywhere you turn, you'll be confronted with more animals. Leo's wife takes in almost any creature which comes her way and often finds herself tending to young orphaned animals. Even the dog's enclosure is a little unconventional, for in amongst the hard-working sheepdogs is a fox raised from a pup. One of Leo's favourites is his old man Emu, who at one time used to help round up sheep like a sheepdog. But recently he became clucky, and Leo found a warm, fertile egg in a wild nest and brought it back for the frustrated bird. The young chick hatched out in time and is now inseparable from his foster father. From Leo's homestead, it's only a few minutes' drive to the range of hills on the far side of the property, and it's here that Leo conducts his highly personalised tour of the bush. This place is a sacred tribal ground where only the elders were permitted to visit and to be buried here. No women could come near this region.
Now, we've got 3 Aboriginal graves here. There's about 60 along the side of this hill, and each grave runs roughly north and south.
But they're all lined up the same?
All lined up the same. The tribe is the Ngundi tribe, and they were chased out of here by the white men about 100 years ago. They're a fairly ferocious tribe, and they kept the white men on the move a bit. And when they chased them out, they chased them to a pretty scrubby hill where they set alight and burned them nearly all to death. A few of them remained here, were later on driven out in bullock wagons and carts when Jimmy Governor, the Breelong Black, went on the rampage.
I never realised that the Aboriginals marked their graves with stones like that.
Well, I didn't till Dr. Isabel McBride, the government anthropologist, came here, and she identified them as blackfellas' graves.
It's only unique to this area, is it?
I don't know this. I don't know. We don't know how they're buried, whether they're sitting up or lying down. We do know these stones represent devil stones to keep the spirits out.
Leo takes every group of visitors on a walk through the hills, which is dotted with rock shelters and places of interest. Most of the points of interest would easily be missed by the average person.
This is one of the many Aboriginal shelters up here, and we're talking about over 100 years ago, so most of our signs have gone, but if you notice down the bottom here, where they probably had their fire, you can see where the black smoke held on the roof, and round by me there's actual rock where they sharpened their spears and axes on. Yeah,
This log here has marks in it. Now the experts tell us that these marks, and there are several of them all the way up to the top, were created with a stone axe. Now, the Aborigines, of course, are the only ones that used stone axes, and the idea is to create footholds so they can climb to the top of the rock. Why, you might ask, would they want to go to the top of the rock? Well, let's go up there and find out. Well, this waterhole, of course, is the reason that the Aborigines would want to get to the top of the rock. Now, with the water here, you might think is rainwater, but it isn't. It's water from a spring. Now, the theory is that this huge rock was once attached to the hill behind me, and at some time in the distant past it came off the hill, rolled down and ended up here. It probably on the underside had a cave in it, because there are many caves in these rocks up here, and that landed squarely over the top of a natural spring. The water from the spring, forcing its way through probably a crack in the rock, comes to the surface here and rests in this pond. Now, the pond is about 1.5 metres deep, and the level never varies.
A reliable source of water like this provides the perfect location for Aboriginal occupation, and the hills not only abound with wild game, but bear natural fruits and berries to vary the diet, something Leo is pleased to demonstrate.
And you just call this a 5-corner, do you?
Yes, it's an Aboriginal food. Each little berry has 5 little leaves around it. Pretty hard to see like this, Mel, but
Oh yeah, I can see it.
pick up the little
Can you
leaves
eat
coming
it
out.
just like that, do you?
No, you've got to wait till the berry actually falls. It becomes very plump and large as it falls. And here we have them laying around in a cluster. You've got to be very lucky to get these to beat the birds. But you might be able to tell me how they actually taste.
Yeah, try one.
They're right.
That's supposed to be if it's on the ground.
I wonder what they taste like.
A bit like a grape.
Kiwi fruit. Oh, it's a bit like that.
The walk takes several hours, but at every twist and turn of the trail, Leo adds some small piece of information to make the bush more interesting.
No, it's just natural as far as I can make it. Everything is natural up here. It's just left the way it is.
The walk proves too far for Carmen, who has fallen asleep by now.
People have sort of made them walking around having a look at things.
Well, another very positive sign that the Aborigines lived in this area are these rubbing marks here on this stone. These rubbing marks have been created when they've been sharpening stone implements, such as this stone axe. The idea is that they rub it backwards and forwards there, and of course doing so in the same place over a long period of time, it creates a lot of grooves. It's been estimated that this particular groove here has required 80 man-hours to create that depth. And it's these implements, this is a very fine specimen too, have been found around here in fairly large quantities down on the lower level below this range.
It was the abundance of Aboriginal stone implements, like the stone axes, which first pointed to this area as a region of Aboriginal occupation. And now, with more thorough research into the many rock shelters and caves, more information is coming to light every year about the ancient tribe which once called this land their own. It's easy, now that we've seen Leo's explanation, to see why the Aboriginals called it Nagandi. We're on Tambourine Mountain in Queensland. It's the sort of place you'd expect to find some exotic butterflies, particularly up here in the rainforest. It's been brought to our attention by Greg Smith of Mansfield in Queensland, who says he's just returned from a trip where he visited a butterfly farm on Mount Tamborine in southeast Queensland. He says, "I didn't really know how beautiful they could be, and I'm sure there are a lot of other people who thought the same as I did, and would want to see these colours of these beautiful insects on your show." Well, Greg, we're going to do just that for you. Gary Sinkowski shows me around his butterfly farm.
This is our main breeding cage here, where we have
all the mating butterflies. A lot of them come from North Queensland, including that big blue one, the Ulysses, and the big Cairns birdwing. And all the egg laying goes on in here, but most of the caterpillars are taking out and bred in separate cages where we have the food plants in potted plants. Each morning we have to add a bit of artificial nectar to the flowers. A honey and water mixture is used as a supplement to the butterfly's diet. It's difficult to have enough flowers blooming to keep a constant supply of nectar for the thousands of butterflies. Gary has a small plant nursery where he grows stock for the butterfly cage and caterpillar house. The leaf wing was named for its obvious resemblance to a dead leaf. Australia has 365 species of butterfly. Of these, Gary specialises in breeding 50 species. The mating dance of the orchard swallowtail is followed by mating. The most striking of the butterflies in the breeding cage is the iridescent blue Ulysses swallowtail, a native of North Queensland. The female Ulysses is laying her eggs on a suitable leaf. There are many different species of butterfly eggs to be found under the leaves. What I'm doing here is collecting the eggs. We have to do this every day, usually each afternoon, because the predators in here at night, crickets and spiders, eat most of the eggs, and we'd lose almost all of them if we didn't collect them daily. They're kept in this little dish here for about 5 days it takes before they hatch. These are the eggs of the orchard swallowtail. This one feeds on plants in the citrus family. Local school children visit the butterfly farm to see nature at first hand.
See the very pretty coloured in the middle, the very pretty coloured right up the top, and another one up here. What about these two green ones? Can you see those up there? Yeah. They're our mountain butterflies, those ones. They live on the mountain here all the time, and they fly high up above the trees.
Listen, Gusky, look at that one.
Yes, well, look at that big one up there. Can you see the really big one up on the hill? Well, yes. Can you see the blue from there?
No, it was over my head.
Well, when it opens its wings, you'll see a flash of blue.
These visits are very popular with the children, and they are learning at first hand. After the caterpillars hatch from the tiny eggs, they are released on their special food plants and left to grow. This is the main shed where we have the most of the caterpillars up today. The caterpillars or larvae come in various colours and sizes and eat all the time until they are ready to change into a pupa or chrysalis. One of the larva's main form of defence from predators is bright warning colours that usually mean poison to insect eaters, or colours that camouflage the caterpillar on the foliage. One unusual defence mechanism is triggered when a predator touches the caterpillar. Suddenly, 2 bright coloured horns emerge and spray the attacker with a foul-smelling liquid. When fully fed, the larvae prepares for the change into a winged insect. This miraculous change is a reconstruction of the animal within its pupa case. The caterpillar sheds its old skin by body convulsions, then hooks itself to a small pad of silk it has woven. As it ages, the chrysalis hardens and its colours darken. From the pupa stage, it takes between 2 and 3 weeks before the butterfly emerges. A slightly crumpled Cairns birdwing emerges from the chrysalis. This is one of Australia's largest butterflies, with a wingspan as big as a saucer. As soon as the butterfly emerges, it starts to pump liquid into its crumpled, moist wings and waits for them to harden. It must uncurl and exercise its proboscis, or else it would remain stuck together. This miraculous cycle of nature is complete as a beautiful butterfly waits to fly off to mate and start the cycle over again. Some varieties of butterfly can live as long as 15 months. The Cairns birdwing is one of these. Out of each batch, we release the best specimens in the cage here for breeding stock. The major part of Gary's work at the butterfly farm is supplying Australian butterfly specimens to overseas collectors. There are about 2,000 butterfly collectors in Australia. As well as his Australian customers, Gary supplies a large overseas market. A rare aberration for the Cairns birdwing like this one here could bring up to $1,000. But before you rush out to make your fortune with a $2 butterfly net, don't forget you need to be an expert on butterflies, and you also need a permit to collect and sell and breed butterflies in Australia. The majority of Australian specimens vary in cost from 40 cents to $15. The Mount Tamborine Butterfly Farm has been in operation for 6 years and will soon be open all year round when Gary gets his heated breeding cages installed. The tourist side of the farm is only just developing.
We've had a tremendous response to Ask the Leyland Brothers. We've had many letters from the viewers, and we'd like to thank you for those, but we'd still like to get some more. Don't forget, if there's something you know about that you think would make a good story for our program, then let us know about it. Write to Ask the Leyland Brothers, Post Office Box 900, Newcastle, 2300.
Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland Brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland Brothers.